be.
Okay, looks like we're live. Welcome to Dive into World Building. Here we are. We meet again, as they say, and today we are talking about basic safety. And I don't know, basic safety is so variable. Like, it is so context-based that I thought we should really kind of dig into it a little bit. And yeah, because like for some reason I was thinking about crossing the street and how unsafe crossing the street is like now versus the way that crossing the street might have been at different times in history, for example.
Oh, so I want to immediately jump into, you know about the whole story of jaywalking, don't you?
Give it to me.
Yeah. Okay, so once upon a time, in the early days of cars, pedestrians basically ruled the streets, and
Yes.
And so pedestrians walked everywhere, and so automotive traffic was a slow and plodding affair in cities because, well, there's pedestrians wandering all over here. You can't build up any speed. The automotive industry initiated a campaign to basically shame people and change laws so that they could only cross at certain points. And the whole idea of jaywalking came about as something that first you shouldn't do as a social thing, and then B, eventually became laws and regulations like only crossing at crosswalks in order to promote the use of automobiles at speed within cities. And so now this is where sidewalks became a thing, and this is mainly a Western European phenomenon, because now from personal experience, when I went to Nepal last October, I'll never get old saying that, the streets, there weren't many sidewalks. There was except for the major roads, everybody shares the street in Nepal. People, vehicles, everything. And you basically account
livestock
for that.
And stuff too, or like
what?
Livestock as well?
Animals in certain sections, yes.
Okay.
Especially once outside the city, yes. So everything shares the street, except for them gigantic major roads in Nepal, and that's the way it used to be here in America until the automotive industry changed that and made it so that people could only cross at certain sections, and that basically that traffic laws favored the driver in many sorts of situations.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. And obviously, yeah, well, that's a great place to start. Yeah, so one that I think basic safety is one of those things that we teach our kids.
For the show notes, there's a link for you.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yep.
And I think also like so what are the things that we watch out when our kids are up to, things like running with scissors.
Well, the whole idea of crossing the street was a rite of passage. It's like,
right?
It's like, yeah, wow, you're old enough to actually cross the street on your own.
Yeah. And not everybody can, A lot of adults have difficulty with crossing the street.
Yeah. How fast can you get across? Can you cross before the light changes?
Speed across walks and the use of signals. Like, for example, those buttons that you hit to actually turn on a crosswalk in many parts of the country. Like in New York growing up, they never worked because the crosswalk things would always come on. So when I visited California for the first time, I said, why are you hitting the button? The button doesn't do anything. But in Southern California, the button does something. If you don't hit it, you'll never see the crosswalk sign.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a culture shock for me. It's like, what? This thing actually works here? Why is this magic? It should just happen automatically. I thought it was just a fake button.
Yeah.
That was my life. And for New York, it was.
Well, I mean, so there are a lot of things that people decide need to be done in the name of safety. And safety is one of these weird arguments. Like, if you're going, well, basic safety, you can actually argue for a lot of weird stuff. One of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking about the development of jaywalking as a concept was car seats.
And seat belts.
Seat belts, yeah.
Seat
Safe at
belts
any
and
speed.
car seats. You know, well, seat belts, okay, because everybody uses those.
But that
car
took
seats
time.
is car seat rules have seemed to get more and more stringent. And I think part of it is that the industry is really excited to sell more car seats. And so they can do it easily just by saying, well, we've developed this thing, it's even more safe, right? Anytime you're arguing for basic safety, it's sort of like a fear-based argument on some level.
Oh, definitely. I'm sorry, I seem to be dominating discussions. When I last
No, that's okay.
When I last bought a new car, the Subaru salesman kept pushing like, well, you want the safest car, don't you? You want this car because it's the safest car. And I felt it was like fear-based. I could see fear-based argument like flashing like a neon sign, and I eventually did not get the Subaru.
I mean, that's what
That's a shame.
that's what they used to sell home security systems as well. Right?
Yes.
I mean, well, you wouldn't want to not have an alarm on your house. It's basic safety, don't you know? So like this is a topic that has a lot of stuff, a lot of wrinkles, let's just say. A lot of wrinkles.
All of the wrinkles we've just talked about have to do with making money for somebody providing a safety feature.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And here's Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hey.
We have just touched on how companies like to make money by using safety-based arguments to make you buy stuff like car seats and home security.
Yeah.
And plugs to stick in your electrical outlets and padding to put on your coffee table.
Oh yeah, and the whole child proofing.
Mm-hmm. That whole thing, which we did have the padded thing on the coffee table with the sharp corner edges. But after our goddaughter proved that she was much better at opening these safety locks on the cabinets than any adult we knew, we just said, screw that. It's not gonna, forget it. We're just gonna watch our kid and there are things that are important. You keep an eye on your kid, but there are things that you want to, like the padding on the coffee table, because you can watch your kid and your kid can still trip over anything, and even if you're watching.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the things that's considered to be good basic safety where I live is fastening things down to shelves that they are on and fastening large furniture units to the wall.
Yes.
Oh, earthquakes. Duh.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
Didn't think of that. Yeah.
And there are, okay. I get the whole personal responsibility part of it. But when we are talking about things like world building on another world, then we need to start thinking about things like, hey, we've only been doing studies on how flame works in zero gravity for about 5 years, and we still don't really know how that works. And as someone who does public health things, I am reminded every single day that OSHA regulations are written in blood and gravestones.
Mm.
And so I understand the personal responsibility part of it, but there's a lot of it that has to do with public responsibility that is over determining your personal responsibility.
Mm.
So when we talk about, okay, we need to talk about safety, well, what are we talking about? You know, who's really talking about the oxygen plant? Who's really talking about the percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere and how that's going to change how things like fire and gas and all that sort of thing works?
Mm.
It just annoys me to no end to have, like, a lot of the old science fiction is like, wow, they were in the space station having a cigarette. No, it doesn't work.
We are not.
No, you know, and so I'm just sort of like, I'm at the point of needing to write some stories about how that all comes about. You know, we did not know how dangerous oxygen was, pure oxygen,
Yeah.
until the late 60s, early 70s. The two things that happened were we had 3 guys burn up in a module, and we had a whole bunch of premature babies that were blind. Because we didn't know that pure oxygen was really not okay. We were like, well, oxygen is good for us. We like it. We'll have more of it. No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Dosage is key.
Yeah. Amazing how most of our atmosphere is nitrogen, and we don't know that.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. And another part of it is, okay, we have a space station. We have people reproducing on that space station. How are you going to keep children away from the buttons? You know, and where are they placed in the space station? And how do we deal with all of that? You know, we have doors that we're supposed to close here in order to keep the dogs apart and keep the baby from falling down the stairs. And even that baby's parents are like, no, we'll just leave the doors open. It doesn't matter. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, the minute that baby falls down the stairs, it's going to be somebody else's fault. But if you have a decompression incident, who's looking at the kids? Who's looking at how the airlock slam shut? Who's looking at all of that stuff? How does this work? How does a cascade failure work?
And how do you plan for the thing about children anywhere is that they change and their capabilities change really, really, really fast.
Yeah.
Really fast. And some of them actually literally climb walls. And so
They do.
yeah, I was never any of those, and my kid was certainly never any of those. I'm sure I have a bridge somewhere. Really fast. So, but they're understanding of why they shouldn't do things they can now do doesn't move as fast.
No, we often see like the protagonist going into the place with all of the uncovered vats of molten metal.
Oh God.
Yes.
But we never see the toddlers going in there.
Yeah. And how do you child-proof without making it inaccessible to disabled people?
Yeah, that was where I was going
Okay.
with my thought.
Yeah, because that is a thing that
That's another thing
that's
that
an issue.
earlier science fiction wouldn't think about really. It's like, yeah, what about people with physical handicaps? How do they get around this space station or whatnot?
Well, and a lot of that depends on what our gravity looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody asked me once, they were like, well, you know, I have this character who is a paraplegic, so is paralyzed from the waist down. wouldn't they be an asset on the station? Well, I don't know, but can you write this in a way that doesn't make it seem patronizing?
Yeah, that's much harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and
Because
also
the answer to the question, would they be an asset, is, I don't know, what are the skills that are relevant to being on a space station?
exactly. And how have our ideas as abled people, because right now our astronauts are like super abled people,
Mm-hmm.
how is that going to change? Because we're going to have people who have accidents in space, and do you take them back home? Do you leave them up there? What do you do?
Yeah.
How do they deal with differing gravity levels in the space station? If you are in the center of a spinning station and you're a paraplegic and you're fine, you can do the things, you have your hands, blah, blah, blah. And then the minute you walk out into the HAB modules that are spinning at 1G, you're slammed to the floor.
Yeah.
So how does that change how you design things for habitability? There's a bunch of stuff we don't know. You know, what if reproduction depends on 1G? Then what happens?
Yeah.
And where do we put the children at that point? There's a whole bunch of design elements that kind of haven't really been explored in the way that we would need if we had a fully functioning society with all kinds of different people.
Mm-hmm.
Fully functioning meaning one that doesn't leave disabled people behind.
Right.
And
Or doesn't hand wave and say, oh no, they don't exist in the future. It's like,
Oh my gosh, yeah, because that's the worst.
that is the worst. Like, yeah, we've cured it all. Like,
Uh-huh.
what?
No.
Yeah, there are no more accidents ever.
I mean, there's a book by Sherry Tepper where there are no homosexuals because there's no reason for them to be in this world, and you're like, I don't know. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. I really do want to write the ocean inspector on some starship, and we've talked about this in Star Wars quite a bit. Like, why are there no railings?
Yes, you and I, yeah. I mean, because I work on a safety committee at work, and we talk about ocean. We talk about the things that our workplace has to be safe. I mean, we're not a manufacturing plant like the other sites, but we have chemicals, we have machinery, we have all sorts of things that can go wrong, and people get defenses like, well, why do I have to chain up the ladder? Because we don't want someone to fall over and hit somebody on the head, you idiot. The ladder has to be chained up. And if OSHA comes in and doesn't see it, we will be fine. So chain up the freaking ladder. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole part of Ender's Game, one of the fights, where it's like, it's in a bathroom, which has all these protruding things. Why are there protruding things? If we are in a place that has variable spin, and we know that that's a problem, then why are there still protruding things?
go and watch. This is a thing. Whenever I'm watching a cop show or a movie with violence or threats of violence in it, and they're chasing through a kitchen, steam tunnels, any kind of factory, or a laundry. Those are the places most likely that somebody will suffer some horrible, terrible, possibly permanently disabling accident, or not accident.
Yep. And we don't think about the fact that, like, okay, other than Star Wars, what happens to garbage? And how dangerous is that of a process? I mean, we're learning now, as we look at the orbital area around the Earth, we can't just throw crap out the airlock. It becomes really dangerous at 150 kilometers per second.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't, there's a whole bunch of stuff about that kind of doesn't happen. So
I mean, people
ahead.
always want to airlock people, but like that's a different kind of space debris.
Yeah. It's a fairly big piece of space debris that will soon be frozen, and it becomes a very large projectile. And if you look at some of the engines or space processes that have been hit by a microscopic piece of paint that's traveling at 350,000 kilometers per second, and there's this huge divot in whatever that is, now scale that up.
Yeah.
So golf balls.
Yes.
Golf balls.
So I've been every so often I go through Stargate and Stargate Atlantis again. And there are these episodes where the characters are hitting golf balls through the gate. So, okay, just dial a random world and hit a golf ball through the gate. Because who cares what happens?
Yep.
Or golfing off the pier in Atlantis and into this ocean. And then there are the guys in some not science fiction shows who just hit golf balls off of hospital roofs. Like, are you trying to drum up business or just stupid?
Yes, I read a really interesting thing today of like, well, you know, my grandpa was really cool and he took me up to the roof of the building and he showed me a grenade and he dropped it off the side. Because that was awesome. And then the other part of it is this person standing like, yeah, I was standing on the street and my father just exploded right in front of me. And it's like, yeah, you got to think about where that all goes. And so at the end of that, do you have the alien whales on this other world shooting ping pong balls at each other and stuff? You know, or have you irreparably damaged that ecosystem because you're introducing plastic to it and your microbes that are stuck to it? Oh God, don't get me started on microbes.
Oh yeah, microbes, lordy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I came a little late. Hi. I don't know if Alien was mentioned before.
Nope.
Okay, so the entire plot of the movie Alien is based on Ash ignoring the safety protocol of the company, the Weyland Yutani.
Yep.
Yeah, and Ripley trying to enforce it and Ash ignoring it.
Quite vocally, you know. And if he hadn't deliberately violated that safety protocol, no movie, right? So there's that. The other thing is, I had occasion to, sorry about the kids in the background. I just yelled at the movie. Anyway, I would have been on earlier, but actually it's safe. While you were talking about safety of kids, it was ironic. I was noting the irony. The Ed 209 robot that goes berserk in RoboCop. I've seen the prop that is the basic prop for it that it was built from, and it's full of all these teeny tiny safety stickers, warning, high voltage, this and that you can't see in the movie because they're teeny tiny, but they're hilarious given the context of the Ed 209. It's a nice realistic touch. They have like, you know, the yellow and black stripes, and they have warnings with lightning bolts, high voltage, don't open this panel, you know, that sort of thing. You can get hurt.
And you know, it's funny because sorry, that made my brain go boing. But I thought of N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth books, and the fact that people try really hard to kind of give indications of what's safe and what's not safe, but the constant disasters keep erasing all of the safety warnings.
Yeah.
So safety warnings are really interesting.
And that could lead into a whole different topic of like the idea of how people are trying to label nuclear waste sites where those labels will be understood and be legible for thousands of years, so our descendants will actually know what's actually here and actually stay away from it.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you do that?
Okay. There are so many problems with the book Gateway. There are just huge problems. But one of the things that I find is just absolutely genius about Fred Pohl's writing is that he had the information storage documents just kind of scattered all around, and nobody knew what they were. They used them, they thought they were decorative and whatever, because they didn't know that they fit into the other thing that was also scattered around, and then all of a sudden you have all the information. That's amazing. But also, yes, what happens when you stick the fork into the wall outlet and nobody, you know? And literally what I was talking about before about having protruding stuff, look at our space stations now. Those things are death traps. Not to mention smelling like sweaty gym socks. But
Yeah.
how are we going to make this transition? Are we going to do it the same way we do here, which is have the outer skin and then panel it off on the inside? And how airtight, watertight, whatever tight those are going to be. And there's so many things that are just sort of taken for granted that we do in terrestria that are not going to be givens up there.
Yeah.
Or on another world. Like, what do you have if moles secrete acid and chew through your foundations? What happens then?
What do you do with moles secrete acid? Well, I mean, yes, this is a very context-based sort of thing. What are the conditions of the world that call for you to take precautions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you're in Subnautica and there's no land, there's a whole raft of things you have to do that you wouldn't have to do if you were in the Sahara. The climate conditions, just the general physical conditions of wherever you are so critical for safety.
Well, and what if the thing that is threatening you is virus sized and you can't really protect against it? That was one of the plot points in Kim Stanley Robinson's
Aurora.
What?
Aurora.
Thank you. And they just figured, well, we can't do anything about it. We're going to go home. But I don't know that that's a great answer.
No, in that answer, sidebar, yeah, that was not a very satisfying answer for me. But I see the point. It's like, yeah, we can't deal with this microbiome. What do we do? How do we solve this? How do you keep yourself safe from a microbiome completely alien to your experience and preventive measures?
And as we see in Mars, I think the one with Matt Damon in it, where we don't know what our microbiome is actually consists of, and so we don't know what we don't have when we go to another world and try and grow, say, corn. There's an entire fungus and bacterial suite that allows us to grow food on this planet. And if we don't have it, it's not going to go well. So how do we keep that? But also, how do we keep it contained and not have it contaminate the rest of the planet the way that European earthworms have colonized the rest of all of the US, and it's wreaking havoc on our forests because they didn't evolve that way.
Or sidebar, our own internal gut flora. How do we make sure that our internal gut flora is something that we can maintain on space stations, on alien planets over long terms when we don't have the natural environment outside to continually replenish it?
Yeah, no, I think that's not even a sidebar. I think that's a great question. And what do you do with corner cases? There are people who have gut flora such that they brew alcohol inside their bodies.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? How does that change your recycling system? What do you do with that?
Now I'm also thinking about beer production, yeast. bread production, all sorts of things. I mean, you can't make sourdough on an alien planet that easily. Now, can you?
No, and even if
Some
and
people
if
can
you
make
manage-
sourdough on here on Earth too easily.
Well, yes, exactly.
And if you do manage to do it, how do you keep it contained?
How do you keep it contained without contaminating your alien planet? Good point.
Well, I mean, so there are a lot of these kinds of considerations, and a lot of them get either hand waved or just overlooked for the purposes of telling a different kind of story. But I think there is a lot of room for telling a story that doesn't shove these things into the background. You know, because a lot of the stories that people are setting out to tell are like, you know, I really don't necessarily want to deal with whether our gut flora are going to be a problem. I have a story that has themes about conversations, and you know, so I for one have been known for setting aside big pieces of science like faster than light travel and just going, well, we have it.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah.
Now that we're here, let's talk to these people. So,
well, there's a difference between hand waving and saying, yes, we have these things, and not having them at all, or
right,
having
exactly.
them and ignoring them, like you have physics, but you ignore physics and tell the story that, because if you actually paid attention to physics, you couldn't tell that story. And if you actually paid attention to the safety regulations that you have in place, you couldn't tell the story you wanted to tell.
Yeah.
I think there's also a way that I think really good authors, it's sort of a micro info dump. It's like so-and-so hit the lever that did the thing. And you don't have to tell what the thing, how the thing does the thing. It just has to do the actual thing. So a lot of the sort of cleansing things that happen when you come back in from outer space and you decontam. And that's just hand wave. We have no idea how you would decontaminate. But the fact that you have that makes it a much more science fiction story than a fiction story.
Yeah.
Because you're acknowledging that it's a thing that has to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of talk about, well, hard science fiction versus soft science fiction. Okay, fine. I disagree with the conversation altogether. However, I'm going to work on the parts of it. Like, if you want your science fiction to feel harder, here are some of the physical implications you're going to want to take to account for.
Yep.
So one of the possibilities for storytelling is to invent a safety protocol that's built into the operating system of the spaceship or the space station or whatever, and an unexpected, unanticipated need arises, and part of your problem with the protagonist is they have to circumnavigate, they have to get around the safety protocols that are preventing them from saving somebody's life.
And I think there's been a lot of science fiction that deals with the beginning of that, like, you know, the airlock doors all automatically slam shut and we're going to pull the guy out before his leg gets severed or blah, blah, blah. And I think that's great. I think it's also 1975. And so we need to be looking further and deeper and being more detailed about those things.
But it can be a software protocol,
right? Oh, yeah.
The computer won't let you in to, you know, has the authorization yet, and you know, whatever, things like that.
I can go back.
Ways to really annoy your protagonists and amp up the stakes.
Yep, it's a good reason to have a team too.
Yeah.
I can go back to I can't tell if I can't hear Cliff if he's talking or not. I can go back to Stargate Atlantis for that, the safety protocols, and because they're dealing with safety protocols set up 10,000 years ago by the people who built the city. that are not built for actual humans who go diving through wormholes across galaxies and taking over other people's cities without actually having a clue what they're doing. Or people who figure they are the ones who are best suited to solve the problem, even though they don't know anything about the problem, so they circumvent safety protocols. So there is a more than one episode where those things are not settled, but come into play.
It's arguable in the last season and a half of The Expanse that when an operating component gets violated, or an operating rule gets violated in the universe that they're in of the gates, that's why all of a sudden you can't move faster. It's literally a safety protocol that you can't move fast enough to do damage. You can't shoot a gun anymore. You can't get a ship going fast enough to ram something or hurt something. That's why everything slows down. And I have no idea whether I just made that up or it's actually in the text. I have not a clue. But those are sorts of things like you could also be when you're exploring an alien world. Yeah, they have safety protocols for stuff that you're not thinking of.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, half of it doesn't work because you violated something you have no idea what it was or why I did it.
Yep.
Oh,
And especially safety protocols for senses that we don't have.
Ooh, nice. I was having a trouble with that. I'm like trying to design this space station that's made by aliens, and I was like, they're standing outside an airlock waiting for the green light. And I went, is it green and is it a light? And what am I even writing about?
Yeah, like at least the whole possibilities. Yeah, human. I mean, Juliet, you were talking offline before about your alien space station.
Yeah, my alien space station.
Yeah, it's just like like. I mean, an ambassador of one species visiting another planet. Like, how do they interact? How do they understand these safety protocols?
Yep.
On Earth? I mean, going back to the beginning, like, how do they understand traffic? How traffic works in New York versus traffic in Kathmandu? Those are completely different environments, and aliens kind of thrown in the deep end. Now take a human and throw them on an alien planet. And how do they even learn these sorts of basic things?
Yeah.
Ooh, we need a better alien anthropologist who goes in and asks like 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds questions so they.
Yeah.
That's how my friend the anthropologist works. She goes into a village that she's not aware of, and she sits down with the kids. Is like, well, how do you do this? And then what happens? And they're just like, how do you not know this? We all know this. She's like, that's my job. So yeah, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be fun?
45th.
Yeah, my brain's already going on it.
Needed anthropologists to go to alien planet. Must be good with alien kids.
Right. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of like, this is a huge design question that's lovely, but God, it's huge.
Well, I mean, I have a whole new topic we could totally do, but we should probably do it in another hour.
We only have about 10 minutes. It's probably
only have 10 minutes.
Oh,
I feel like I'm standing here holding a can of worms going, oh, it's a big can.
Put a pin in it for next time.
even to the point of like, if you are wandering around in an alien aircraft hangar,
Yep.
are you going to understand that what's written on the wing of the plane is do not step?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Has anyone else been on an aircraft carrier deck?
No.
Only the Intrepid.
Ooh, cool.
I've been on an aircraft carrier deck, but not when it was like doing the thing.
I need to spend more time with you guys.
Wasn't doing the thing when I was there either, but they had all the signage from the thing, and there are walkways that are painted on the surface of the deck, and the staff the ground staff, as it were, the ship people who support the fighter planes, they have to stay in those paths or they will die because or suck them into an engine or something. So that and there's no guardrails. There's just paint, and so that could be an analog for spaceships, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Imagine being a human trying to walk onto an alien deck and it's not done in paint, it's done in a color you can't see.
Oh
Or a scent,
no.
right? A pheromone.
Oh,
Does the helicarrier, now I'm thinking from Avengers, have those lines? I don't actually recall them actually being seen on the ground, but Cliff
Excuse me
is
for
right.
a
They should
second.
be there.
Kitchen.
Yeah.
Our Galactica should have it. All the battles.
Yeah, Galactic.
Galactica
Yeah.
did have it on the flight deck. They did. You can see
That's
it
right.
based on the floors.
Well, it's based on a World War II aircraft carrier, so that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
But, you know,
I
I
may not
gotta
know why
tell
they
you,
have it there, but they did. Yeah.
right? As much as Battlestar Galactica got wrong, damn, it got a lot of stuff right.
I know. That's what's
Did.
frustrating about it.
Yeah? Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
I'm thinking that's a completely different topic than safety, though. That's another podcast.
Okay. Well, let's note that down. We'll do that one.
What are we noting down?
Society and religion and social change on fleets fleeing existential threats and what you get wrong doing that.
Oh, yeah. And there's a book that, oh, God, I can't even remember the guy or the name of the book, but I'll find it. Oh, my God. It has to do with religion and other planets and what you want to do with it. And let's send the assassins and let's not do that. Okay. It's really awesome.
So that's a little unclear to me, but we can talk about it some
Another
other
time.
We can talk about it
Back to
after.
safety.
The thing that the can of worms that I want to open up in a future discussion is social safety protocols.
Yes, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. But
Yep.
like things like what kind of people are dangerous and how do we know?
Mhm.
Stranger danger and all that.
Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
to avoid having to fight a duel to the death, right?
Yes.
oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of the Firefly episode where Mal winds up in a deadly duel and he didn't realize that's how this works here. It's like,
Yep.
what?
And I can totally see that, you know, on a station or something like that, you'd have to settle things with a really, really crucial game of rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock.
Yeah, like the gun to the death. The gunslingers, you know, in the Wild West, they had a tendency to do two things. They swore a lot,
Yes.
so that they seemed tough, and they were excruciatingly polite to one another.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't accidentally wind up in a duel to the death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that or the Princess Bride of not to the death, to the pain.
Mm.
Yeah, because it would be very, very easy to get permanently messed up that way.
Yes. And in a place that's dangerous, it's really easy to mess someone else up.
Yeah. We also haven't talked about a lot about tools and
Mm.
safety,
Yeah.
but that's a whole other raft of things.
Yeah, the whole like projectile weapons on a spaceship or space station thing is like,
Yeah, no.
no.
Projectile weapons on a plane
Look,
aren't
the
such
mic
a
is
great
on,
idea
is not on,
either.
Cliff.
Hmm?
Cliff's mic is not on, but he's talking.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
I keep turning it off so the kids don't come
Yep.
through the mic. So Megan O'Keefe's novel Velocity Weapon begins with a safety protocol.
Yes,
Right,
that's
the
right.
Character wakes up in an infirmary, and she has been surrounded by safety foam that is only supposed to, it's like the space equivalent of an airbag. It's only supposed to deploy in dire emergencies. And she's coughing it up and literally vomiting it and realizing she's surrounded and filled with this stuff. So something terrible must have happened, and she's trying to remember, but she has traumatic injuries. So of course her memory of the actual crash is limited. And so, but it starts with all about safety protocol.
Okay, that is on my reading list.
You should read it. It's good.
Thank you. No.
Well, yep. There's a lot here.
Uh-huh.
It's funny because sometimes I spend a bunch of time, searching my brain for topics and I don't know what we should do next. And I was thinking about it. I was like, ooh, safety protocols. Because of course, we are instituting new safety protocols in many locations at this time concerning the washing of hands and the
Yep.
and the
Hey,
wearing of masks
yeah,
or not wearing of masks and the, that sort of thing. So
yeah, I mean, how long do you wash your hands is a topic I didn't expect to come up in 2020, but here we are.
yep.
Well, because we all learned when we were kids, go wash your hands. Go wash your hands. Have you washed your hands? Go wash your hands.
At least-
Yes, but I did. I was my parents. I don't know, but you guys never told me how long to wash my hands. It's like, okay, I washed my hands. I mean,
well, I remember at
it's-
one point being taken to task for having washed my hands, and then all the dirt was on the towel.
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't until college and microbiology class I had a professor say, yes, you should wash your hands for 20 to 30 seconds with soap always, especially if you're going to be handling live cultures. So it's like, oh, that's how long you wash your hands. Oh, thank you. No one ever told me this before. It's like, well, now I know.
And that is, as we have just demonstrated, that is something that we tend to individualize and go, well, we all know this. We don't all know this.
No, we don't.
No, there's a reason why in the certified nursing exam, one station of it is hand washing. And how you do it, which pieces of your hands you wash and in what way, how far up, how you dry them. It's very mash. But there's a whole bunch of things that also adds up to safety on the space station, which is microbial safety. Do you have faucets that you can turn off with your elbows? Are you using foot, things? And if you're using foot pedals and you don't have gravity, what are you doing? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to think about in that, and actually, frankly, you're in a space station, you don't have gravity. How are you washing it? Because that bulb of water is just going to concrete around the end of the faucet. So what are you using, and is it really doing the thing?
Yeah, I remember. I'm recalling that video of that wonderful astronaut wringing a washcloth.
Oh yeah, Chris Hayfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hayfield.
That was an awesome video.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of those. They were fascinating. One thing that I'd like to sort of bring up is the tendency of safety protocols to be invented after somebody dies, or signage, right? Like if you're driving a curvy road and then all of a sudden one curve has all of this guardrail, it's because somebody once went off that curve and probably died, and then that prompted somebody to.
Yeah, that did get mentioned earlier as regards OSHA.
But also something to think about that we actually, as public health people, measure in the US, which is how many people have to die before the sign goes up.
Yeah.
Because
which
at
people?
intersections is different depending on what state you're in and all of that sort of thing.
Oh.
And which people have to die.
Yeah.
That's-
Good one.
Yep.
One in-person person or a bunch of unimportant people, right?
Right.
Or is there not a limit? How many people have died of opioid abuse and we're doing it poorly yet again, like that sort of thing. How many people have to die by guns and we haven't done anything about it?
Yep.
So maybe there are things that are sacred that don't fall under that rubric.
Yep.
And they have to do with national myths a lot of
Nice.
Yep.
So what myths does your society have that causes blind spots to safety protocols?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, why does amygdala die of being sad while giving birth in the most,
Oh,
advanced medical blah, whatever. I mean, we have androids for Pete's sake, and yeah, okay.
Or those 19th century doctors who would go straight from the morgue to the delivery room, and when told about germ theory, didn't believe it and got angry and more pointedly failed to wash their hands.
Yep.
Just how right they were.
Yep.
Deals.
Yeah, the whole thing of like women's health and how little it is valued is a whole other conversation that we can have about space.
Yep.
Yeah. Totally a thing.
All right. Well, it's 5:01.
Oh, here we go.
Here we went. We did another one.
We don't go on and on.
Well, I thank you all for being here. It's the beginning of March now, and
Wow.
and I'm going to confess that I may be in a panic next week with deadlines and not able to do this, but I presume that I will be able to do this unless I let you know otherwise.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you all for being here. I am going to take us off the air.